Title of the first section today, graphing, horizontal or vertical lines. In this section, we'll graph on the XY axis and we'll graph horizontal or vertical lines. First question, or first equation, is y equals 2. To graph this, we can draw a XY axis. The x-axis again goes left to right or horizontally, and the y-axis goes up and down or vertically. If we have y equals 2 on the y-axis, we can go up 2 spots and put a point at y equals 2. For a line y equals a number, we'll go up to y equals 2 and we'll have a horizontal line that goes straight across. Along this line, the x values change, but the y value is always equal to 2, so that'll be the graph for this section. Second question, x equals -3. Again, we can draw a xy axis for this equation. X-axis again goes left and right. The y-axis is vertical or up and down. If x is equal to -3 on the x-axis, we can go over to -3 and put a point. For any line that's x equals a number, will be a vertical line through the point, x equals -3. Along this line, the y value changes, but the x value is always -3. And last equation for the section, y equals 3.75. Again, we can draw the xy axis for the graph. We can label the x and y axis. For y equals 3.75 on the y axis, if we go up to 3, and if we do one more spot for 4, 3.75 would be between 3 and 4. It would be 3/4 of the way up to 4. And again, for a y equals line, this will be a horizontal line that goes straight across, where every point on this line, y is equal to 3.75, and that will be the graph for the equation. Write an equation in standard form. There's 4 definitions for standard form. The standard form equation is ax plus by equals c. A, b, and c have to be integers. Integers are any whole numbers, could be positive or negative, but cannot contain decimals or fractions. A also has to be positive. And last definition, a, b, and c have no common divisors, which means no number divides into a, b, and c. First equation, or first problem, is y equals -3x plus 1. Taking this equation, we can write this equation in standard form. For standard form, you have to have x and y on the same side of the equation. So to move the -3x over, we can add 3x on both sides. And we'll put 3x first, plus y after, and equals +1. Checking the other definitions, these are all integers. A, which is a number in front of x, is positive, and there's no common divisor between the 3 numbers. So the standard form equation would be 3x plus y equals 1. Second equation, y equals negative 1/2 x minus 4. Again, taking this equation, we can write this equation in standard form. First step is to move x on the same side as y. The opposite of minus 1/2 x is plus 1/2 x on both sides. We'll put x first, so we'll have 1/2 x plus y equals negative 4. Second definition for standard form, a, b, and c have to be integers, which again means no decimals and no fractions. If we have a fraction like 1/2, we can multiply the whole equation by the denominator or bottom number, which is 2. 2 times 1/2 would cancel, so we'll be left just with x, and the 2 will multiply by all of the other terms in the equation. So 2 times y would be 2y, and 2 times a negative 4 would be negative 8. A again has to be positive, or x has to be positive, and again there's no common divisors, so our final answer would be x plus 2y equals negative 8. And last question for the section, y equals 2x plus 4. Solving again, we want x and y on the same side, so we can subtract 2x on both sides. Putting x first, we'll have negative 2x plus y equals 4. Checking the definitions for standard form, a, b, and c are all integers. The third definition, a has to be positive, the number in front of x. If it's a negative number, like negative 2, we can multiply by negative 1 to change that to a positive 2. Negative 1 times negative 2 will be positive 2x. And again, we'll multiply negative 1 by each of the terms. Negative 1 times a positive y would be negative y. And negative 1 times 4 would be negative 4. So the final equation, 2x minus y equals negative 4. Title of the first section today is Graphing, Equations, in Point, Slope, Form. In this section we'll graph equations which are in point-slope form instead of slope-intercept form. Definition or equation for point-slope form is y minus y1 equals m, and in parentheses x minus x1. Using this equation, we'll be able to take equations and graph equations that are in point-slope form. First equation we'll graph is y minus 2 equals 2/3 x minus 4. From this equation, we can figure out what the slope is and also a point, which is x1, y1. M equals In point slope form, m is the number in front of the parentheses. So in this case, m equals 2/3. And we can also get a point that we can put in parentheses, x comma y. The point is the number after the minus sign for the x, and also the number after the minus sign for the y. You can also think of the -4 as doing the opposite. So if it's x minus 4, the x value would be the opposite, which is +4, and y minus 2, the opposite of -2, would be +2. So the slope would be 4, 2. Using the slope and the point, we can draw an xy axis to graph this equation. We'll first start with the point, which is 4, 2. So x would be 4, and y would be 2. From this point, we can follow the slope. If you remember, the slope is rise over run. So 2/3 will go up 2 spots, and to the right 3 spots. So from this point, we'll go up 2 spots, and also over 3 spots. So up 2 and over 3 will be our second point. And we can take these 2 points, connect them, and that would be the graph for the equation. Second equation for this section is y minus 3 equals, in parentheses, x minus 1. From here again, we can find what m equals, the slope, and also find a point. The slope m again is the number in front of the parentheses. If there's no number in front of the parentheses, we can always put a 1, so the slope would be 1. For the point, x comma y, if we have x minus 1, do the opposite of -1, which would be +1, and y minus 3, the opposite of -3, would be +3. So graphing, we can graph the point and use the slope. Graphing the point first, 1, 3, the x value would be 1, and the y value would be 3. If we have a slope m equals 1, we can make this a fraction. Anytime you make a number a fraction, we can put a 1 on the bottom. So the rise over run would be 1 over 1, which means 1 spot up and 1 spot to the right for our second point. Connecting these 2 points will give us the line for the equation. And last equation for the section, y plus 4 equals -2 x plus 1. Again, in point slope form, we can take the equation and figure out the slope as well as the point. M equals, m again is the number in front of the parentheses, so m equals -2. And the point, x comma y, if we have x plus 1, you take the opposite of +1, which would be -1. And if we have y plus 4, the opposite of +4 would be -4. Using the slope and the point, we can graph this equation. Point -1, -4. -1 would go to the left 1 spot, and -4 would go 4 spots down. The slope we have, m equals -2. Again, we can make this a fraction. Anytime you make a number a fraction, we can put a 1 for the denominator. -2 means we'll go down 2 spots instead of up 2. So 2 spots down from the point and 1 spot to the right. And taking these 2 points, we can connect it to get the graph for the equation. Title of the last section today is write an equation in point slope form and in slope-intercept form. In this section, we'll take an equation and write the equation in point-slope form, and also write the equation in slope-intercept form. First question, I have a point 4, 2, and the slope m is -5/4. So taking a point and a slope, we can first write the equation in point-slope form, which is the equation we did in the previous section. The equation is y and minus the y value. The y value would be 2 equals m in this case is -5/4, and then parentheses x minus the x value, which is 4. So our first equation is y minus 2 equals -5/4 times the parentheses x minus 4. This is the equation in point-slope form. And the second answer, we can take this equation and write the equation in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is solving for y, getting y by itself, and having slope-intercept, or mx plus b, on the other side. First step to this equation, y minus 2, we can leave the same. And on the right side, we can distribute -5/4 times x would be -5/4x, and -5/4 times a -4. A negative times a negative would be positive, and when we're multiplying fractions, we can make everything a fraction by putting a 1 on the bottom, and we'll have -5 times -4, which would be positive 20, and 4 times 1, our denominator would be 4. Simplifying, we have 1 or y minus 2, -5/4x, and 20 divided by 4 would be 5. Last step, to get y by itself, you get rid of the minus 2. The opposite of minus 2 is plus 2, so we can add 2 to both sides, and we'll add it to the like term, which is 5. So our final answer, y equals -5/4x, 5 plus 2 would be 7. So our second answer to the question in mx plus b form, or slope-intercept form, is y equals -5/4x plus 7. Second question for this section. Point is -2, -7, and m equals -3/2. Again, taking the point and the slope, we can plug in the values for the point-slope form equation. The equation again is y minus the y value, which is -7. So we'll have a minus from the equation and a negative from the -7, equals m, which is the slope, -3/2, and then parentheses x minus the x value is -2. So again, we'll have a minus from the equation and a minus from the -2. Simplifying, minus minus, we can change to 2 pluses, and minus minus, we can also change to 2 pluses. So we'll have y plus 7 equals -3/2 and x plus 2, which will be our first answer, which is the equation in point-slope form. Second part of the question, again, we can take point-slope form and rewrite this in slope-intercept form. To do that, the y plus 7 we can leave the same, and we can distribute or multiply the negative 3 over 2 into the parentheses. Negative 3 over 2 times x would be negative 3 over 2x, and negative 3 over 2 times a positive 2. A negative times a positive would be negative, and the 2 we can make a fraction, put it over 1. Multiplying 3 times 2 would be 6, and the denominators 2 times 1, which would be 2. Simplifying, y plus 7 equals negative 3 over 2x minus 6 divided by 2 would be 3. And last step, to get y by itself, so where we have y equals mx plus b, or slope-intercept form, we can subtract 7 on both sides. So y equals negative 3 over 2x, and negative 3 minus 7 would be negative 10. So our second answer to the question in slope-intercept form is y equals negative 3/2 x minus 10. And last question for the section. We'll have 2 points. The first point is negative 1, 0, and the second point is 1, 2. Using these 2 points, we can write 2 equations. The first equation in point-slope form, and the second equation in slope-intercept form. Since we have 2 points, but we don't have the slope or letter m, we can use these 2 points to find the slope, or find what m equals. If you remember from previous sections, the equation for the slope m is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. y2 and x2 are the x values in the second point, and y1 and x1 are the values in the first point. So plugging the numbers in, y2 minus y1, the second value 2 minus the first value 0, and the x values, second x, which is 1, minus the first x, which is a negative 1. And again, we'll have a minus from the equation and a minus from the negative 1. Simplifying, 2 minus 0 would be 2. 1 minus a negative 1. Minus a minus, we can change to 2 pluses. 1 plus 1 would be 2. And 2 divided by 2 would be 1. So the slope for this question, or between the 2 points, the slope m is equal to 1. Taking these values, we can write the equation. If we do first point-slope form, we can do y minus the y value. Since we have 2 points, you can use either point and get the same answer. If we use the first point, the y value would be 0. So we'll have y minus 0 equals m. M we found, which was 1. And in parentheses x minus the x value. Since we used the y value from the first point, we'll use the x value from the first point also, which is a negative 1. If you did use the y value for the second point, you'd use the x value from the second point also. Simplifying from here, y minus 0 would be y. 1 we can leave the same, and minus minus we can change to plus. So we'll have our first answer, which is in point-slope form, y equals 1 times x plus 1. Writing this equation in mx plus b form, if you distribute the 1, 1 times x would be x, and 1 times 1 would be 1. So our second equation in slope-intercept form, or mx plus b form, is y equals x plus 1. Find the slope of a parallel or perpendicular line. Two definitions. The first definition for parallel. Parallel is the same slope. So if we have two lines that are parallel, both lines have the same slope. Second definition for perpendicular. Perpendicular is the opposite reciprocal slope. So if we have two perpendicular lines, the slopes are opposite reciprocal. Opposite means one's positive and one's negative, and reciprocal means it's the same fraction but flipped upside down. First question. Parallel to y equals 1/2 x plus 2.3. So we'll find the slope of a line that is parallel to the equation y equals 1/2 x plus 2.3. Looking back at the definition, parallel lines have the same slope. Looking at this equation, which is in slope-intercept form or mx plus b form, m the slope, number in front of x is 1/2. Parallel again will be that same number, so the slope for this m equals 1/2. Second question, again, is parallel to 3x plus 4y equals 12. From this equation, we want to find the slope, and then once we know the slope, we can find the parallel slope. This equation is in standard form. Standard form is where we have x and y on the same side. To find the slope, we can put this equation in mx plus b form or slope-intercept form, which is solving for y or getting y by itself. To get y by itself, we can get rid of the 3x. Opposite of positive 3x is minus 3x on both sides. 4y would come down. 12 minus 3x. Normally we'll put x first, minus 3x, and the plus 12 at the end. Solving for y, 4 times y. The opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. Y equals, when we're dividing by 4, we'll divide each number on the right side by 4. Negative 3 over 4, we can leave as a fraction. And x would go after it, so we'll have negative 3/4 x, and 12 divided by 4 would be 3. So the equation in mx plus b form, or slope-intercept form, is negative 3/4 x plus 3. The question is parallel to this equation. The slope of this equation, or number in front of x, is negative 3 over 4. Parallel means we want the same slope. So the same slope would be m equals negative 3 over 4. And last question for the section is perpendicular to y equals 2x. Perpendicular, again, the definition is opposite reciprocal, and we want that to be perpendicular to y equals 2x. This equation is already in mx plus b form or slope-intercept form, where m, the slope number in front of x, is 2. So this equation, m equals 2, but instead of the answer being m equals 2, we want perpendicular to the slope or perpendicular to 2. The slope we can make a fraction by putting a 1 on the bottom, 2 over 1. And the answer we're looking for, the slope, will be perpendicular or the opposite reciprocal of this number. Opposite means we'll change the sign. If it's positive 2, we'll change it to negative. And reciprocal means we'll take the fraction and flip it upside down.